So, hi everyone. I am not Miriam, as I'm sure you all know. I'm Cohen Duncan, and I am working with Athlete Soul on helping develop content creation and management and all of that great stuff. Miriam is actually on vacation today, so I am stepping in to lead this for her. My first time leading it from her end, and so we'll see that hopefully this all goes smoothly. We have a wonderful session planned for you today with Shelley Lyle about leveraging your strengths and talents. And we have a wonderful athlete that we're featuring as well, Grace Buhar. So these huddles occur every month. We try to keep them at the first Friday of every month. Sometimes the time kind of varies within a couple of hours, but we try to keep it to around the same time, so about 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific. So thank you for hopping on a little bit earlier today with our start time. But I will go ahead and start introducing Shelley, who is our coach that is leading our session today. Shelley is a former soccer player from the University of Florida, and then she played with the U23 national team. And she is now a part-time integrative coach and also working still at University of Florida teaching and career counseling. So that is a short introduction to Shelley. She'll be able to share more with you about her background, but really excited to have her here today, and I will let her take over.
Hi everyone, it's great to see you all. I see some familiar faces, some new faces. It's good to be here with you. So today, we'll be digging into some of your giftings, and I felt like it was a good resource to provide for you to just kind of do some self-assessment, and also something you can do along with your athletes. So before I go into my session, we'll introduce Grace here and get to hear her story and her athletic journey. But in the in-between, if you have a second, you can go ahead and grab a piece of paper and a pen or pencil, something to write with, because we will need that for this exercise today. So I'll give you guys a minute. Yeah, go ahead and.
We're going to exercise?
Oh, well, maybe our brain, we're going to think.
Awesome.
I always love a good movement session, but that one's not today per se.
Oh, shut up.
Okay, so if we are ready, I'll go ahead and introduce Grace here. She's a member of the acrobatic gymnastics senior national team. She has traveled around the world and competed for Team USA. She also coaches littles at her gym. She likes puzzles, and I'll let her share a little bit more of her career journey. She is one of 8 kids as well, so a large family. And so Grace, we're so glad you can be here with us today. We'd love to start out with you kind of sharing your career journey, where you're at, what it's been like for you.
Yeah, hi everybody. So I have been in the sport of acro for, this will be my 10th year. And I am 24, so I kind of got started a little late there. I started the sport when I was 14. And before that, I had done artistic gymnastics. So that's like the vault bars, beam floor, classic gymnastics. And basically I did that since I was 3. When I was 13, I got a pretty serious back injury, and I just couldn't kind of keep up with it anymore. I was also growing. I'm 5'9", so at the time I was like 5'6", which isn't the best for a gymnast. But so after that injury, I was pretty just like upset, and obviously I didn't really know what I was doing. I was 13, 14, so I was just kind of like confused where I was going with my life. But a friend kind of introduced me to the sport of acro, and I was like, why not try it out? So I went for a camp and fell in love with it, and then that's what I've been doing ever since. So I've been on the senior national team. This will be my 6th year. And yeah, like Shelley said, I've competed like all over, and it's been really fun.
Awesome, Grace. Thank you. And would love to hear, a little bit more too about what it's like for you now competing out of school. How has that transition been for you?
Yes, so acro is kind of a interesting sport where a lot of people quit when they're 18 and go to college. And so it's kind of hard to stay in it because you have like 6-hour practices every day and you have to travel to and from school if you're going to a college. So I ended up doing that for my 4 years while I was getting my bachelor's degree. I had to commute to school and then commute to practice. Um, and so it was really hard. It was hard in at the time, but I'm so glad that I did it. But now that I'm out of school, it's really kind of a weird transition point that I'm in where I'm trying to continue with my sport, but also figure out kind of what's next for me and my next steps in my life. So it's definitely an ongoing thing that I'm trying to work through, but it's definitely getting a lot more fun and exciting.
Awesome. And when we chatted a couple weeks ago about this, you mentioned the whole transition too for teammates. So can you share a little bit about that and how the challenge, especially uniquely in your sport, of what it's like to get a new teammate for you?
Yeah, so in my sport, there's a bunch of different categories. I work with 2 other girls and we do our thing together. And basically what happens is a lot of the time, like you'll be working with your partner and then one of them will decide like it's time for them to kind of be done or move on in their life. So I had one partner and I used to live in Missouri and I used to train there and I had a partner and then she decided that it was getting a little bit too much for her, so we decided we were gonna move on as like a group. And when that happened, I was 18 and I was also kind of deciding whether or not I was gonna move on or if I was gonna kind of keep going with it or just stop and go to college like a lot of my other teammates had been doing. So I got a call from a coach in Maryland, where I live now, and they were just saying how one of the like top athletes that I was like always looked up to was like in need of a new partnership as well. And I was like, there's no way I could be as good as her or like be a good partner for her. But we tried it out, me and my sister, and we ended up becoming a trio together and we moved to Maryland and trained with her. And then when she became 18, it was like 3 years ago. She decided she was going to go to college as well. So I was like, well, I still feel like I have more in the tank. I can still keep going. So we found another girl that was on our team that was in a different partnership that also needed new partners. And so every time I've switched partners, it's a huge challenge and it's like a rebuild from zero, but it's looking back, it's so worth it and so much fun. And it's it's definitely like a challenge, but I think it's definitely like helped prep me for my life.
Great. Thanks for sharing. The reason I find that super helpful too is because I think, one thing when we think about transitioning out of sport and, some of our identity crisis and challenges, the reality too is that you're with your own team and the impact that losing or changing or shifting out of that or to even somebody new is so big for individuals, especially for you guys working so closely together and kind of having to mesh your personalities and moves together, I would imagine, which is even more complex than some of the other sports that many of us probably have participated in. So that's great. And can you, we're talking about the middle ground, you and I, like the in-between, competing and not moving necessarily on to a full-time role or position occupationally. Can you share a bit about what that's brought up for you?
Yeah, so the last like I graduated last spring and since then I've been doing like some internships and some things here and there to kind of figure out like what the next step is for my life. So this in between, it used to be really hard for me to kind of feel like at peace with myself because I felt like I was behind everybody else that's my age. Like I'm 23 right now and everyone else is starting their career and everyone else is like starting like long relationships or getting married or things like that. So I was like, I don't feel like comfortable like and I kind of realized that like I was just comparing myself to everybody and like my way in life is going to be different than everybody else's. And if I'm like doing what I love and like following my dreams and like shooting for my goals, then like that's what's important to me and not like if I am starting my career. So it's been definitely a journey, but I've been getting getting there with being more at peace with myself and not comparing to everybody else that would be my age or whatever the normal person's doing. And I'm just trying to do what I want to do.
Thank you, Grace. And last question, how did you get connected with Athlete Soul?
Yes, so I'm an athlete representative for USA Gymnastics, and one of the other athlete representatives was explaining to me like the Athlete Soul program so I could help share it with other people, other athletes in gymnastics. And I was like, oh, that's kind of interesting, but just like was sharing it with people, and then it came up like she emailed me, was like, you should look into this Beyond Sports program after I graduated, and that was through Athlete Soul. So I was like, I don't know, that seems a little bit not for me, but I just like felt like it came into like my life for a reason. So I was like, why not? I'll just join it. It was like a good time and I had the time to do it. So I ended up doing that program and it was really great. And that's kind of how I got involved here.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Grace, for sharing your story. I don't know if we normally do this, but do you guys anyone have a question for Grace or want to say anything about her journey? You don't have to, no pressure, but.
I just want to say I loved what you were saying about, figuring out how to, no longer compare yourself to others. I think that's something that all of us athletes have gone through, and it just kind of coming to that realization. And it's something sometimes that we hear from people outside of ourselves, but you have to actually get to that place of acceptance. So I love that you moved there, and good luck with everything. I'm excited to have you a part of our community.
Thank you.
I think it's a strong attribute to cling on to as well, that it seems you're developing a great skill in pivoting and also just trusting what life puts in front of you in the moment. And so, trusting your gut, trusting your instinct, especially as a woman, is so important. And I just heard notes of that throughout your story. So thank you for sharing.
Is there anything that you think that the Olympic Committee or the Olympic and Paralympic Committee should be doing to help athletes that are making this transition?
I think that programs like Athlete Soul and like the Beyond Sports specifically one that I had gone through is really helpful. I know like since I'm on like the senior national team that it was free for me and it was like perfect. So like the things like that are like great, and I don't know if there's like more ways to get them out there and like into the minds and the lives of athletes so that they know that these resources are available, because like I'm like as an athlete representative I kind of have to be the one that sends out these resources, and that's kind of how it came to me. So I think that like any way that you guys could connect with just like people that can get the message out there is really helpful.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Any last thoughts, questions before we make a move into our exercise today? Okay. Grace, thank you so much for sharing your story with us and answering questions. We appreciate just hearing, the insights of your career journey and also some things we could think about too in helping our athletes along the way.
Yeah, I was glad to do it. Thanks for having me.
Okay, so now as we make a quick little shift here, we're going to do an exercise where I ask a lot of questions. You'll get to write some answers, and then we'll discuss it as a group. So that's kind of the structure of this session. But want to introduce myself and share a little bit more. Like Cohen said, my background is in soccer. I played for Florida in the U23s and then 5-year semi-pro, and did coaching, private training, kind of taught, coached, did that world, and then moved overseas and was an athletic director in Kigali, Rwanda for a year and a half, and I was a commissioner of a soccer league and a soccer coach, also known as football there. But so I did that and then moved back to the US and got my at UF in sport management, and I would sport in love with athlete development. That's how I got connected with Miriam and Athlete Soul. So I teach athlete development now, but originally I worked for Dr. Sagas, who has done a lot of research in the athlete development world. I was his GA and got to work alongside him and just really loved the holistic development of athletes, which I think Sport for Development in some ways does implement as well. But that's kind of been my passion, and did 4 years of trauma care training as well out of a organization in Seattle called the Allender Center. And so really felt the need and kind of the gap when I came back to UF and worked for the soccer program of athletes coming in and feeling like they had their own stories they were bringing to the team, and coaches, which I was working alongside, were not equipped to engage the stories that were being brought to us, the circumstances that could be happening in college or could have been brought from home. And so that's really where I became passionate about, finding a way to help athletes transition, process through identity crisis, kind of coach them through those really hard or injuries, things like that, the difficult spaces that athletes have to work through in the game and then even after the game. So that's a bit more of kind of what brought me to create integrative coaching. I still teach athlete development at UF, and I'm also do a lot of career coaching and engaged learning for them. But I've known Miriam, I think, for 5 years now. So we've stayed in touch and gotten to work together and just stay in communication. So I love athletes. So we've had some athletes at Florida actually intern as well. And I'm always open and encouraging for athletes to get the extra care and extra support that they need as well. So with that being said, today I really wanted to talk about giftings. So this is going to be really focused on you and in your gifting. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask you some questions. And the first few questions, you're going to write down 2 to 3 things that come up in your gifting. 2 to 3 things. First things that come to mind are fine. You don't have to overthink it. They'll be quick, kind of like primer questions for you to get thinking about your gifting and talents. And then I'm going to have some kind of deeper questions, and they'll build on each other. So if you don't have you don't feel like you've answered it right, or you want it more time, you can always go back and answer that questions. So anybody have thoughts, questions before I get started on how this will work? Okay. And before I do that, I would love to do just a breathing exercise. This is something I do in some of my trauma care sessions. I find it's really helpful just to recenter. You guys are probably coming in from different times and periods of your day. They might be hectic or crazy, or you just made it into this session. So all we're going to do is we're going to take 3 breaths together. So just want you to find a comfortable position. You can keep your eyes open or closed, and we're going to breathe in through our nose and out through our mouth, and we're just going to do it 3 times, and then I'll start with my questions. So this is called a grounding exercise, way for you to just recenter and reorient yourself before we get going. So if you want to take a deep breath in with your nose and out with your mouth, and in with your nose and out with your mouth. And one more, in with your nose and out with your mouth. Okay, if your eyes are closed, you can open them. The first question is going to be, what are you good or gifted at in the following areas? That's the basis of the question. So what are you good at or gifted in the area of work? So that could be your occupation, that could be any of your volunteer work, things like that. What are you good at or gifted in your work? And I'll give you guys about 30 seconds to answer each one. 2 to 3 things. Okay, next one. What are you good at or gifted in your play, in your fun thing, the fun things you do? Maybe what you do, what brings laughter, maybe some things you do for entertainment or joy, things like that. What do you do? What are you good at or gifted in your area of play? Okay, next one. What are you good at or gifted in the area of relationships? This could be listening well, inviting others to do things, acts of service. These relationships could be romantic, they could be friendships, they can be family. What are you good at or gifted in relationships? Okay, next one. What are you good at or gifted in health? Things such as exercise, nutrition, mental health activities. What are you gifted in or good at in health? Yes, what are you good at or gifted in the world of in health, like in healthy ways? Could be exercise, nutrition, mental health activities. Okay, next one. What gifts do you think, so we're going to get a little bit deeper here. What gifts do you think you uniquely bring to the world? What gifts do you think you uniquely bring to the world? Okay, and last question before we move into a group discussion. How would your friends, teammates, or family members answer that same question? Meaning, what gifts do you uniquely bring to the world? How would your friends, teammates, and family answer that question for you, or about you, I should say? And obviously, you don't always know, but you might have some ideas. Okay, we'll give you guys like 10 more seconds if there's any other questions you need to follow up back into and run a write on. But we'll finish up and then have a discussion question. Okay. All right, so we're going to go into this group discussion. So I'd love to know one gifting that maybe surprised you when you were doing this exercise? Surprised you by you hadn't really thought about it, or surprised that it was as strong? Maybe you found it was showing up in various areas for you. Or yeah, so what is one gifting that surprised you during this exercise, and one that maybe stuck with you or stuck out? You can just unmute and share. We'll just go around. Everyone doesn't have to share, but would love to hear some of you and what you're kind of.
So Shelley, I wasn't ready for stubborn to show up, but it did. It actually showed up like 3 times, so that's probably an issue. But I thought that was interesting and really powerful and cool exercise.
Thank you. Yeah, and you said stubborn, so a gifting. So tell me more about that.
Yeah, I think it can go either way, right? Like it's maybe connected to being determined, or maybe not completely satisfied with the status quo, or maybe being impatient. And sometimes that can work to your advantage, and sometimes it can be the opposite. But I think there are definitely some applications. Being stubborn is helpful.
Awesome. Yeah, the whole like stubborn, driven, committed, like all those words that can kind of be a little bit blurry on the gray sometimes as well. Yeah.
I'll jump in and say something I was surprised at is I was just on vacation with my college friends, and I'm 61, so that's been quite a while ago. One thing that they appreciate is that I depend on them, right? One thing that when I really need them, they're there for me, and they they like being able to contribute, having the space to do that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, like the idea, like you're open and you're vulnerable enough to bring them things that are going on with your life, and they can actually speak into them.
Exactly. Right. They feel really like proud of my success because, I've needed help on the way.
Yeah, that's awesome. Which I think for athletes too, like the vulnerability can be really hard to ask for help, to need help, to be willing to say that. So.
Oh, absolutely. And the people, like I do remember some of the older people as I was growing up, that they would talk about some athletes as, that they were so tough and they didn't, sort of came across as invulnerable. And I was like, well, that's really not, I mean, I knew as a kid, right, that was not me. And it made me question, because nobody ever says, oh yeah, that Olympian, boy, they're really vulnerable. And that's what helps them get there. But it is true.
Yeah. Thank you, Nancy.
Yeah. Wait, is this for me? From Miriam? She writes, how would your friends, teammates, and family answer the previous question about you? Like I was answering the question about what would your friends say? Like they appreciate it that I listen, and that I'm vulnerable, and that I allow them into my life.
Mm-hmm.
Does that answer the question, Miriam?
Yeah, no, definitely. I wanted to add, like, for me, what came up was the way that my friends, family, teammates might answer the question is different from the way I think that I contribute to the world. So one thing would be creativity. So I hear, you're so creative, but that's not one of the gifts that I see. That's not what I put forward on my list. So it just reminded me that other people obviously see things in you that you don't see within yourself very well, or you take for granted, and you're just like, well, that's not that great, or you minimize. So I appreciated that this exercise brought that to my attention.
Awesome. Thanks, Cohen. Yeah, I think that goes to as well, like whose voice you hear louder, right? Or like what's harder to find, like what people have said about you or what you think about yourself. Anybody else want to share what stuck out or what they found surprising?
I'll just say really quick that themes of mine came out around like funness, making things a little bit lighter and a little more joyful or fun. Um, in the play, I really thought about just like my inner child being present and being able to play. But at work, we recently did our like coveted annual reviews, and I was very impressed and surprised to have 9 of my peers review me, which seems like a lot of effort for people to put in on my behalf. So humbled by that, but there was a lot of threads of like bringing positivity and to difficult situations. So I think that matched what I kind of sparked for myself.
Awesome. Thank you, Katie.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. I think it's helpful to be affirmed. I'm impressed that they had 9 reviews. Like that's peer reviews. Yeah, that's awesome. Did anybody have something coming up for them, even just writing out like their gifting? Did anyone feel uncomfortable or be like, yeah, I'd love to do this. This is normal. Or was it awkward a little bit? Like, oh, I gotta like think really hard.
I felt my little perfectionist monster coming up and being like, well, no, that's not a gift, or talking myself out of acknowledging certain things. That's interesting.
I really felt like the sense of age. I'm in my 40s now, and I just sense like as a 20-year-old and as a 30-year-old, how people viewed me or what my gifts were then. And it felt awkward because like kind was one thing I wrote, but sometimes kindness for me could be like not being assertive enough in relationships and something I've worked on a lot more. So that's kind of like, ooh, it's kind of cringy to see myself, what could be seen as positive, but is kind of not something that worked so well for me when I was younger.
Yeah, the growth, like how you can see yourself. Like, how would you have answered this? Isn't what we're going to do now, but curious what you would have said about yourself too when you were competing versus now, and like the growth and the difference between those two things would be really interesting as well. Cohen, you also mentioned the whole idea of the voices, like the monster that's like the negativeness, and would also be curious about that. Like, how does that show up when you competed? If you were a current athlete versus even now, like how is that crossed over? I did this exercise actually a couple hours ago on a former UF player that I was like, you want to be my test person? Let's see how this goes. And she said, yeah, she was like, why? I think you should ask them, like, what is the voice? Like, are there voices that come at the places where they are gifted, like negatively? Like, because she was internally wrestling with, I think I'm this gifted, but then this person says this, and I'm not sure, but other people say I am too. And so I thought that was really relevant to how we've competed places of negativity when we were athletes, and then also just kind of the nature of having to kind of battle those negative thoughts and things like that as well. Okay, so let's go into a couple more questions. Let's do 2 more. And the first one is, what areas of your gifting or talent do you think may have been dormant due to your dedication to your sport? Or for Grace, competing, what areas of your gifting or talent do you think may be dormant due to the time spent on your sport? Okay, do anyone want to share that one? Did they feel like there was anything they found that could be dormant, maybe when they competed or places They could be even dormant now. It doesn't always have to be when you competed, but do you notice a place that?
I'll chime in. I
Yeah.
haven't participated yet. Sorry. Hi everybody. I'm Roberto. I would say for me, what was maybe primarily dormant, and it was a product of being a professional in my sport, was the play aspect. I just didn't have as much space for obvious reasons because you just focus on your sport and trying to maximize the most you can for the window of time you have. So you can't risk injury. You have a schedule set out, travel, blah, blah, blah. As a lot of people on this call could relate, where it was one of those things that as I was nearing the end of my career, I was almost most excited about because I knew I'd be entering a different phase in life where I could grow in ways that I had strategically not allowed myself to, but the interest and curiosity was there. And that's something that I've really enjoyed the last, I think almost 8 years now. So yeah, so play, which is a bit ironic, obviously being an athlete and playing a sport, but yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Roberta. You want to share a little bit more about the differences for you then and what play is or means?
Yeah, sure. I'm originally from Barcelona, so football or soccer is massive, as obviously you would know. And it's always been in the periphery of my life, not just watching it, but being super keen to play. But I couldn't do it for obvious reasons. And yeah, so that's something that was like kind of on hold, and now I've gone like absolutely mental for it since I stopped playing. Like I have a pitch in my backyard, I have one in the basement. My nephew, who's actually in town from Barcelona, is outside playing right now, and I could hear him. So yeah, so that's something. But then at the same time, something that wasn't as dormant as I grew up speaking different languages, and I've just continued to learn different languages, and it's almost like a gamification now, just to learn as many as I can within reason, because I do like to travel. I grew up all over the world and meet people where they are, and I think sports is a great it's a great tool to like lower barriers of entry into communities. And then if you could lower the barrier via sport and also speaking a person's language, then you just set yourself up really well to get to know them better and also enjoy it in a different capacity. So that's another area of play, if you will, that I really have been able to kind of pour some of that energy and time I have now that I'm not like a full-time athlete into. So yeah, football, learning languages, and a few other things. But yeah, those are two things that really stand out for my play.
Awesome. Thank you, Roberta. Appreciate you expanding on that as well.
Yeah.
I'm happy to share.
Yes, please.
Okay, hi, I'm Jenny. I'm a former track and field athlete. And the gifts that were showing up, actually in every area that you had asked about that I think were also dormant when I was an athlete, were all related to other people and my connection to other people. So I see myself as like a very thoughtful person, caring, having a lot of empathy and bringing harmony to a team. And those are some of my most like coveted strengths that I didn't have as an athlete. I was in an individual sport. And so that just didn't serve my sport, and I actually had to be really selfish. And so I didn't allow a lot of those relationships to be too close anyway, because I was so focused and always doing what was best for my sport. And I do remember towards the end of my career really craving that and craving more human connection.
Thank you. Yeah, that's interesting, right? Because coming from a team sport, it's different as well. Like you could have both wanting to connect with your teammates and work together, and then also like the comparison, like we've all talked about too. And yeah, that's really interesting. Thank you for sharing that.
I'm Bill. I don't know if you all can hear me or not.
Yes, we can hear you. You're clear.
Okay. So skating as a pair skater is kind of the combination of team and individual, because I had to rely on my partner and she had to rely on me. But the biggest thing that changed for me after we got done and we did professional stuff together, the focus of my life after competing became much larger to enjoy ourselves, like everyone has said, and value the things that we couldn't do. Sports is so focused. Sometimes when it's over, that focus changes.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, we kind of names, do you guys all kind of, you can nod your heads or put thumbs up or whatever, but do you feel like play was the one? I'm just hearing a lot of like play, and then Jenny said the relationships. Like, do you find that, like, even though the irony is we played sports, like we did play, maybe competed should have been a better word. But yeah, Nancy, I see you went off. Did you want to share something there?
Yeah, I wanted to share that it wasn't specifically related to what you were just saying about not.
Oh.
I have a kitten who got in the way. It wasn't specifically related to play, but it just how when I was training, how one of my gifts, I would say, for the world is I'm a really good writer. I'm a lawyer, and it took me, I should say, a long time to become a really good writer. And, to just, being a professional and advocating and having the skills to do that when I was training, I couldn't do any of those kinds of things. I really liked how that when I was training, there was this unbelievable focus on my body. And, it's constantly, right? And when I finished it, I didn't have to constantly be worried about every little, shoulder and ache and, something going on. I liked not having that burden, if you will. But one of the gifts that's come up is just writing.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks for sharing that, Nancy. Anybody else want to share on that question?
Go ahead, Cohen.
No,
Okay. I was gonna say that I also feel like play is a really big aspect of my life that's kind of like I kind of yearn for it. Like I want it more, but I want to stay focused on my sport at the same time. So like I wrote down like being creative like outside of the sport, like just trying things for fun and not trying things to be competitive. It's something that I've always just like wanted to try. And like as I'm kind of getting to the end of my journey, I know, in this sport, like it's just something that I've been like looking forward to doing. And I kind of like how Roberto like said, like it's exciting that you can do it now. And like I feel like I'm always like, oh, I wish I could do this, where like I can kind of like change the mindset to think like once I'm done with my sport, like yeah, I'll have time to do that. So like I don't need to like despair over not doing it, but like look forward to it.
Yeah, I love that perspective, Grace, to be excited about what you can do now in the creative space, and then also what you'll be able to do later.
I was gonna to say, I mean, kind of along the lines of what everyone else has shared, like play was something that I definitely missed, but also just the ability to, I put one of my gifts was adapting to new things. And I felt like as an athlete, yes, I was getting to adapt to different situations, especially in competition, but I didn't feel like I got to challenge myself outside of that space too much because there just wasn't the time, right? And I didn't have the energy, and I was so focused. And so that's something that I have a little anxiety about going into new situations now post sports, but once I get there, I'm so excited about my ability to be able to pivot. So it's kind of cool.
Awesome. Okay, so we'll go to one more question. I know I watched the previous videos that you guys have already had the huddles, and I just felt like identity, obviously this is kind of the focus for this, and transition and identity, and there's a couple exercises I can share too, or at least talk about, that I feel like will be really helpful. We didn't have enough time to do multiple ones today, and I'll share a little bit at the end, but what are some, and you guys have kind of named this a little bit already, but what are areas have you explored and found helpful in your identity transition? so that might be a little bit for you guys who've been away from the game for a few years. But yeah, what areas have you explored and found helpful in your identity transition?
Well, okay. New focus points that may have been part of sport, but certainly weren't things that I could focus on as a competitor.
Thank you, Bill. Anybody else?
Quick question. You said areas that we've explored and found helpful in our identity transition.
Mm-hmm.
I think for me, like, and maybe others on the call, like I've always identified as an athlete, even before I was quote unquote good, like, like primary school and whatnot. So just having that identity kind of grow and evolve with me throughout the years, it wasn't something that I was interested in letting go. So I think what I found interesting, what areas I explored or how found helpful is just like how could that identity evolve in this next transition for me. So like I said, I've been retired. This summer will be 8 years. So like I'm a father of three, so I'm still like want to keep super active. And now I feel like I could be a more well-rounded athlete. Like I do a number of sports. Like I enjoy rock climbing, which is something I do with my kids, etc. So what I found helpful, I guess in short, is just like growing my physical literacy instead of being specializing in my given sport. Now I'm more about just being a more well-rounded athlete, which makes me a more well-rounded individual, more well-rounded person, etc. So yeah, so broadening my horizons is an area that I've found helpful in my transition. So like now I don't have to identify as only X. I could be X, Y, and Z.
Yeah, that's great. So evolving rather than like shifting out of or changing, like the whole athlete, are you always once an athlete, always an athlete? But then what sports are you playing in or competing in, rather than your individual, whatever, sport you were just a soccer player or a track athlete or whatever. It's kind of larger
Yeah,
now.
exactly. And also I find, and maybe it's just me, but I find that also takes a bit of the edge off, where before, for those of us who competed at a high level, like you had to try to get to the highest level possible, where at my age, I don't have the pressure to become the best football player or the best rock climber. I could really just go into things as a passion project, and just truly enjoy it. And just like, as I said, just keep growing my physical literacy, and just continue to experiment with like way less pressure. I'm not trying to make a living out of any of these passion projects or hobbies. It's just like a journey of self-exploration, and I am absolutely like the driver. I don't have sponsors or federations or etc. to answer to, and there's less of a microscope or being under a lens, so it makes that journey even more unique when you compare it to your prior life.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you.
I think for me, helping others. So even within my transition journey, there was a point where I was coaching, and that was because I was injured, so I couldn't compete. And so that was kind of a way where I can't do this, so let me help someone else figure out how to, figure skate. So that and then going on to then go into counseling psychology and helping, as a helping profession, it was just kind of a natural, evolution of my identity as an athlete, into this path. So I really found that, helping others when I was lost a little bit helped set me on a good path.
Thanks, Cohen. Yep.
I would like to answer this question.
Yeah.
It's a lot in like my value and how I measure success. And when I was an athlete, there was so much obsession on achievement and success, and my personal worth was tied into that. And now I'm a mother with two children who both play soccer, and they're athletes. But I've seen this pipeline, this path for them, where at success and achievement at all costs. And I've experienced it, and then I'm watching it all around me. And so I've really changed in how I'm raising my kids, and that really making sure that sport is fun and it's playful. So just like all of you guys are saying that there was no play in sport, you lost that, keeping that for them, and making sure that they're not so obsessed with achievement and they're not measuring their self-worth and self-values on their performance, but it's just a part of them. So that's probably been my biggest like change from as an athlete to how I'm showing up now as a person and as a mother.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. It's helpful.
People's challenge.
Whoa.
Okay, I can add something.
Yes, please.
Yeah, there are not too many international athletes on the call. So forgive me, I'll try to be as clear as possible. So I had a moment, well, it wasn't actually my career as an athlete. I had an injury, so that, had some impact on me, but I dealt with that, much earlier on because I had to switch my hands to perform the sport. So when my second injury happened, I think I kind of maybe underwent a bigger crisis. So I think I turned into art for a little while, and it was just a very short period of time. I decided to do drawing, I think I had something on my leg and I just couldn't really walk very well. So I was like, what do I do? Okay, so I did something with my hand, but my other hand, which is actually my primary hand. But maybe I just picked it because I thought, I should just try something different. And I actually got pretty good with figure drawing for a little while. And but that was just for a very short period of time. I couldn't come back to it. I only did it for a little while when I had the cast on, and I didn't come back to it. But that was something that I enjoyed for a very short period of time as a break. And that's it.
Thanks, Kat. Appreciate you sharing.
I had a similar experience, Kat, where it took me till long after I was done competing and pregnant with my second kid, and kind of fearing that I might lose myself for longer than I wanted to. I was like, I need to do something for me. And I got into watercolor and art. And I'm going to bring this back to the distinction that you made, Shelley, between playing and competing. And I entered into that relationship with art to play. And it very quickly became a competition for me of like, how good could I get and how many different types and styles could I accomplish and be. And that has been like a huge thing in that identity transition, to peel off the achievement, I don't know, lie or
or layers maybe too.
Like whatever it is that's upon us to just achieve like at all costs. And so yeah, I thought that was a funny thing. My someone in my life recently challenged me like, but what do you do just to do it, just to enjoy doing it? And I was like, my watercolor. And I was like, oh God, I even compete at that. So this was like a recent realization that I actually wasn't doing it because I enjoy it as much, but because I was trying to like accomplish some version of success I had defined.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I'll share, speaking of that, I'll share a little bit about mine. Yeah, I play pickleball. That's really popular in Florida. I think it's growing everywhere. But yeah, I found myself very quickly, like, I feel like most of my friends hadn't really seen, I've been out of the sport many years. My teammates would know this, Shelley, but like, they're like, you're a totally different person. And I'm like, and it's just funny because there's still that competitive, like as soon as I got on the court, I was like, definitely in my competitive mode, like we're not losing this. I was pissed when I make mistakes. Like it was like all flooding back in. I'm just an older age and I still have that the competitive drive in me. But yeah, so I relate to that too, because it stopped being fun. I was like, we're gonna train, we're gonna like get a partner, and yeah, it got so competitive so fast. We played, competed in a tournament, and it was all the things. So yeah, I appreciate you sharing that for sure. Well, I know we're coming close to time. Wes, did you want to add anything in? I see you, and I don't want to call you out if you don't want to. You don't have to, but I thought just wanted to include you if you wanted to share anything.
Oh, you've called me out, so I better speak up. No, I just, it's really interesting, and I just enjoyed listening to everyone. And this was an area when you're talking about how you see yourself and how you think. I don't spend a lot of time, thinking about it, which is why this was a tough and awkward exercise for me, because I've had others, kind of give me their opinion of, what they see when I was competing. And I know a lot of that is still turned on whenever, I approach anything in my everyday life. And I've struggled to kind of turn that off, in certain instances, like when my kids are playing sports. It's hard for me to, and I try very hard to just be as hands off as possible and let them have fun and enjoy it, and not kind of interject in any terrible, parent way. But always in the back of my head, it just kills me if I don't see them, kind of driven to achieve something, and it may not be, they're just having fun and having a good time, and this isn't, kind of what their life's journey is going to be. But it's with my mindset, it's just like, gosh, if you're not going to kind of do it and try to do it at this level, then what's the point? So those are things, and I struggle with these demons, I think, all the time. And what I really try to do is kind of shut off a lot of who I used to be, because I've got 3 kids, 2 boys and a girl, and my 2 boys, they never participated in any sport because they always felt like they had to live up to some standard of what I achieved, and they look at themselves and say, gosh, I could never get to that level playing something that I enjoy doing. So I don't know if they felt that I was going to judge them or what the case was, but they just didn't participate, in sports altogether. And now that I'm older and I'm looking back, and I'm just wondering, what, if anything, could I have done to kind of change that? Because I want them to play sports. I know the importance of playing sports and even having a good time. And that's why with my daughter, I am like up in the top row of the bleachers, watching, just making sure I'm not putting any pressure or doing anything like that. But I just wonder, if there's things that I could have done as a parent differently to, let my kids enjoy these sports and activities that they wanted to play, and somehow cast a little less of a shadow of who I was, and have them think that they needed to live up to that. So that's I've just been kind of sitting here just pondering those things. Probably more than you wanted to hear, but that's
no, thanks, Wes. I appreciate you sharing and being vulnerable, just kind of what you're wrestling through. And it looks like, other people on this call have already kind of named having kids and the nature of sports in their lives. And so, yeah, we appreciate you bringing that for sure. I know we're close to time. There's one quick, we're going to do an exercise, but I did want to show you something that might be a good tool for you guys. If I can screen share, can I screen share really quick, and then I'll. So this is a resource called the Good Life Journal, and what I like about it, let's see if I can screen share now. Oh, it doesn't look like I can share it. Code, is there any way I can share it? Do you know? Okay, I can, you know what? I think I can copy paste because I just pulled it from the internet. This is actually from a book, but Designing Your Life. But this is called a Good Time Journal, and I'll put it in the chat. And the reason I like this exercise, I've used it when I've taught career transition with, let's go to everyone. And okay, so when you open that up, you'll see just a list that you can start to, it's a little journal. And the purpose of it is to go through your daily life and to journal out what exactly gives you energy and engagement and what zaps your energy. So this is a good exercise maybe for you, or if you're working with an athlete, that can help you. Like you'll go from, you know, I have a meeting at work at 8 a.m. to 9 p.m. or 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. And this is how I felt after the meeting. Like, where am I on this? It's like this gauge. Like, am I depleted of energy? Am I higher with energy? And what I think is really helpful is for those who don't have, you know, who are really just exploring what gives them energy. They might not even know that the energy is being taken from them, but this helps people find their giftings and what they feel like makes them come alive as well, rather than just kind of like, what am I good at? What am I not good at? I don't know. So it's just a practical way to kind of self-assess through a week, like what areas in your daily life are giving you energy, what are taking them. And that can help guide you on the next step. And then the last thing I'll say is encourage you guys to ask your friends, family, those questions about gifting, what you feel like you uniquely bring to the world. I think you'll be interested to hear their responses. So that is all I have for you guys. Thank you for letting me go over 2 minutes. It's been so good to be with you today.
Thank you,
Grace,
Shelley.
yeah, you're welcome. And Grace, thanks for letting us share your story.
Yes, thanks, Grace.
Yeah,
We'll see you all next
Thanks,
month
Grace.
at the
Thank
next
you.
huddle.